Welcome to another episode of OG55. We have massive news today. Netflix in exclusive talks with Warner Brothers to buy that studio. It is absolutely insane. A huge shakeup in the industry. I have Jared from Capture the Magic with me today and Mr. Seymour Duck, straight from the Duck Pond, up next on OG55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55. This is a crazy topic, and I think the beginning of a very long journey in this WB story. But before we dive into all the juicy details, Jared, it's always good to have you back. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. It's always a good time on here. And yeah, this is crazy news. Woke up to this and I was like, oh, that's gonna make some headlines. And I completely agree. This is going to be an ongoing thing for months about how this plays out. But excited to talk about it. If you're looking for me where I'm at on the internet, you can find me at Captain Magic over here on YouTube. And then if you want some stuff about theme parks, specifically tips, tricks, and all that stuff like that, over here on YouTube at CTM Podcast is where you can find me.
There he is. Make sure you support and show some love to Jared. I'll be linking all that information in the description down below. Mr. Seymour Duck, welcome back. How you doing, sir?
Hello, and thank you for having me on and nerd out with you guys.
Yeah, where can everybody find you on social media, sir?
Yeah, you can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck and here on the Duck Pond on Orange Grove 55.
Yes. We have a show. Seymour has a show on here called The Duck Pond where we dive into the niche topics like K-pop, Japanese anime, like really nerdy corporate stuff. So make sure you check out The Duck Pond. We already have like 4 episodes under our belt, Mr. Duck? 4 or 5? So yeah, check it out. I have a whole playlist right there. And also with Jared, we do a multi-channel live show every other week called Theme Parkin'. Also has a playlist here on OG55. Make sure you check that out as well. All right, gentlemen, let's dive into this. This is crazy. Netflix to acquire Warner Brothers following the separation of Discovery Global for a total enterprise value of $82.7 billion. This is even making the Fox deal blush. Wow. That is right. I mean, it's crazy. So it says here, Hollywood, California, today, Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery announced they've entered into a definitive agreement under which Netflix will acquire Warner Brothers, including its film and television studios, HBO Max and HBO. The cash and stock transaction is valued at $27.75 per Warner Brothers share. The transaction is expected to close after the previously announced separation of WBD's Global Networks division, Discovery Global, into a new publicly traded company, which is now expected to be completed in Q3 2026. It says here, the acquisition brings together two pioneering entertainment businesses, combining Netflix's innovation, global reach, and best-in-class streaming with WB's century-long legacy of world-class storytelling, beloved franchises, shows, and movies such as Big Bang Theory, The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, Wizard of Oz, and the DC Universe. And this is the thing, when you read off these IPs, it's crazy how vast that WB library is. And this is not even a grain of sand on the WB IP beach. I mean, they have all the Hanna-Barbera stuff, the Cartoon Network stuff. They got so much. It's not even funny. But I'll start with you, Jared. This news broke late last night. Ironically, I was actually at Universal when this news broke. But what are your thoughts on this? Because we've been speculating, all three of us have been speculating here on this channel and your channel. Maybe it's Comcast, maybe it's Paramount. It looks like Netflix is actually might actually do this.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought the entire time that Paramount was the most likely to get it. I actually thought Netflix was probably the least likely to end up with it, just from the standpoint of Hollywood is not a big fan of Netflix. They're basically the inverse model of what the movie studios are. So I was pretty surprised to see that. And then honestly, when you read off those IPs from Warner Brothers, I mean, they're in this position due to their sheer stupidity of how they run that studio. There's no reason they should be in the position they're in to sell like this, except for just horrible mismanagement of everything they've done since they dominated in the early 2000s. And since then, it's just been nothing but just mistake after mistake. Now, even though, like we talked about, this is kind of like they're entering talks to kind of nail down a deal. I don't think Paramount's going to go away, as Ellison's already said that they're going to do. They're going to go directly to shareholders, and then you have regulatory things. If it goes through, this will completely transform Hollywood, and I think Hollywood is 5-alarm fire terrified of this whole situation unfolding.
I completely agree with you, Jared. This is absolutely all hands on deck panic mode. Because there's a lot of uncertainty here. This is something that will absolutely change the industry, and also the theatrical side of things. I mean, I do know that Netflix has promised that they're not going to touch the theatrical. They will still honor theatrical, but look, I mean, once they own Warner Brothers, though, I mean, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, exactly. 5 years from now, who's to say that they don't decide just, hey, you know what? Theatrical ain't working out anymore, And I want to also touch upon the fact that we talk a lot about linear here on the channel and stuff, and like how linear is like a melting ice cube. I mean, Jared, and then I'll go to you, Seymour. But Jared, I mean, it kind of is. I mean, theatrical is kind of like that same melting ice cube, right? Where I feel like Hollywood has been really trying hard to keep this theatrical thing afloat ever since the pandemic. I just feel like they're holding back the waters here. When is that dam going to break? And I feel like this might be the beginning of that. What say you? And then I'll go to Seymour.
I agree. It's kind of, if you liken it to if linear television is Star Wars, the movie industry's Marvel. It's not that far behind unless there's some major changes. And this is, I mean, we've seen that it's going to continue to contract unless there's some sort of massive change. But I think when you look at, and we've talked about many times, you can go buy a crystal clear 70-inch TV for under $400, and you can have a great movie watching experience or TV experience at home. And Netflix has created that in many ways. I mean, they won the streaming war. So them selling to Netflix, I liken it before we started recording. It's like somebody came in and robbed your house, and then that person turns around and be like, by the way, I'd like to buy your house now that I cleaned it, got it clean. It's kind of like that. It's kind of wild that Netflix, who started as a mailing movies in the mail type of business, is now in this position to do this. And I completely agree. I think movie industry as it stands now is just like linear television. It's just going to continue to dwindle unless there is some sort of major change, which I will say Paramount has, ever since the Ellisons bought it, they've been saying they want to basically turn movies around. They want to get the movie industry back. And I don't think Netflix is concerned about that. Netflix wants more subscribers for Netflix, and I don't think they really care about the movie industry.
Yeah, it's wild. Mr. Duck, what are your thoughts on this? Netflix, it looks like they're going into an exclusive deal with Warner Brothers. Now, now look, I mean, to be fair, these talks might fall out. We will dive into there is political stuff going on here too. We can't avoid that, right? But what are your thoughts overall on this deal or potential?
So I'm gonna try to put my business cap on and try to give a non-biased take, not a fan take, but more business take, where I think this is actually really good for Netflix. And because I was one point wanted to invest in Netflix, but my number one issue was there's going to be a point where their growth is stalled, and they need to diverse their revenue, and they only have streaming. They're trying right now with gaming. They offer free gaming. It's just like mobile apps, but it's not the best. Here, this is where they could diverse their revenue, and it's the one issue that they have. They don't have the big studios. They don't have a lot of the IPs. They got lucky with the IPs that are very successful now, and a lot of them are ending. Stranger Things, right? The main series is ending. Squid Games, the main series is ending. Wednesday is not even owned by Netflix. It's actually, even though it says original Netflix, it's actually owned by MGM Amazon. And that is licensed to Netflix because they funded the project. So there's a lot of gaps in between for Netflix to be filled. And that would be filled if they had Warner Brothers, especially with the huge back catalog that they get from Warner Brothers. When you get Game of Thrones, Big Bang Theory, right? Friends, they don't have to pay billions of dollars now to get licenses, because I think they pay billions an episode for Seinfeld to go on Netflix. Now you don't have that because you own the rights for Friends. So now you can replace Seinfeld. They used to have Friends. They used to have The Office, right? Now imagine going back with Friends. They don't need to pay those licensing fees. It's now going to reduce costs, and then you're going to get the big studios coming in, and now they can produce their own studios where movies and TV shows where they don't need to go to, like, let's say Sony for K-pop Demon Hunters. They can do it all in-house. So as business wise, right, I think this is great for Netflix.
Yeah. No, I think for Netflix, you're right. It definitely the move. Do you think it's good for Warner Brothers though, in your opinion?
And that's one aspect. I think the reason why they went with Netflix is because they're the one company that has a proven track record where you can see a future where the company's not going to go bankrupt. You know, you look at Paramount, and Paramount was struggling, and now they're throwing a lot of things, like they're throwing spaghetti at the wall to ensure that everything's working. They're spending so much money. Netflix doesn't need to do that because they're already the top dog. They're already the number one streaming service. You don't have to rely on a what if when it's already there for you. And I hear talks. I don't know if it's true. I hear talks that we're gonna keep a lot of people jobs at Warner Brothers and Netflix. Again, I don't know if that's true. That's a lot of hearsay. But if that is true, a lot of the executives, they can see a bright future working with Netflix because it's a proven track record that Netflix works.
Now let me ask you a quick question, Seymour, before I move on to Jared. Like, in terms of theatrical, right? Because that's a big concern with the industry. It's a big concern with a lot of fans. Okay, because so for example, with Disney, right? Disney saw a lot of success with Moana 2. That was going to be a show on Disney Plus. They decided, you know what, we're going to turn that into Moana 2. We're going to make that a movie. So it made, I think it crossed $1 billion, I believe, in the theaters.
It did, yeah.
It did, yeah. It made a huge amount of money in the box office. And then what happened after that? It went into streaming as an exclusive, like, you can only watch it here on Disney Plus kind of thing. Seymour Duck, what do you think in terms of that kind of dynamic with Netflix? Do you think Netflix is interested in that kind of dynamic where, like, you know what? Yeah, we want Warner Brothers to be our theatrical wing so we can double dip like Disney double dips. Is that a thing? Or do you think that Serranos and Netflix, they're more forward thinking where it's like, nah, it's outdated. We'll honor it for a few years, but we're probably not going to keep going with theatrical. What, in your opinion, like, what do you think is the mindset over there at Netflix is?
The mindset a bit confusing because I'm getting a lot of mixed messages telling me, "Oh, don't worry, movie theater is gonna, movies at the movie theater is gonna be fine." But then you're like, "But it's Netflix. Do I trust Netflix?" But I think, at least for the next, if this deal does go through, I believe they'll make a deal with the movie theaters, like a backdoor deal for 10 years to ease the regulators, right? Saying that, hey, we'll make movies for the movie theaters if you approve this deal in the next 10 years. After those 10 years, I don't know what's going to happen. Microsoft did a similar thing where they're like, oh, if you let me buy Activision, we'll release Activision games on PlayStation and Nintendo. And you didn't get Call of Duty on Nintendo Switch, but you will get it from the Nintendo Switch too, for sure, if you let us buy. So we give everyone the choice where they didn't have the choice before. And I could see that happening. But then after 10 years, they might change their mind and be like, yeah, we don't need that anymore. We will just go back to streaming.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, 10 years from now, and this is the dilemma that we're in, right? And I know it might not be the popular opinion, but like theatrical isn't really super healthy, right? So it's already kind of a wounded animal in a lot of ways. And like, so Netflix is coming in there and like they might expedite the fall of theatrical, but theatrical has been on the decline, right? So it's like, I'm kind of curious, like, if, for example, Seymour, like what you were saying, a 10-year promise, right? Where they're like, okay, we'll do theatrical for 10 years. Well, yeah, I mean, that's great because in 10 years, who knows where theatrical will even be, in general, not even Netflix's issue, really. It's just in general.
And there is
right?
a lot of contracts.
Even
and
5 years,
I was just going to say, there's a lot of contracts in place already with the movie theaters for many years with Warner Brothers, and Netflix would have to like abide to those contracts when buying it. as well, because I've been seeing a lot of talk saying you can't cancel those contracts. Those contracts are in place, like with AMC and all that you have to make the movies. And maybe they'll get a little taste of it because they got a little taste of it with K-pop Demon Hunters, with the sing-along versions, and now they're getting a little bit of taste of it for Stranger Things for the season finale. And if it's a huge success, maybe they would change because they can double dip. And it's a one thing that a lot of people don't talk about with Netflix is that they spend a lot of money in content, and some of them don't actually do well, and they lose a lot of money on it. I remember I think it was Electric State. I think the movie was called. Yeah, correct me if that movie's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
They spent over $350 million on it. Nobody was watching it. It barely reached the Nielsen charts, but nobody talks about the negative movies that come out of Netflix. But then if Disney released or Universal or like Warner Brothers released a movie on the movie theaters, right? It doesn't like per se flop, but it doesn't do well. But they forget that you can like double dip and go to the streaming and help that, or triple dip if you count the digital downloads. And I think the industry will have to change when we look at that aspect of it.
Yeah, no, well said. We're in a real big crossroads right now in Hollywood, and on so many fronts. This is just the streaming end of it. Not even not even including the AI stuff. Like, this is crazy what the studios are going through right now. But Jared, what do you think of theatrical? I mean, like you were saying, like 5 years. I mean, theatrical, to be fair to Netflix, has been struggling, and maybe Netflix, expedites that process. Maybe they don't. But like, what do you think about this? I mean, do you think that like,
I think they could look at this like, the melting iceberg. Make the money you can out of it. Like if you're going to buy Warner Brothers, you're like Seymour was saying, you got these active contracts. Maybe they have to make a 10-year deal to get past regulators. Fine, we'll make this deal. We'll double dip, seeing what it does. But I could see a scenario, and what's very interesting is the way Netflix doesn't think like typical studios. Like they're more of a tech company the way they kind of operate just off of analytics. They could get to a point where if theatrical continues to struggle, they have these Netflix houses. What if they buy AMC or they buy some major chain and decide, hey, we don't want to have this revenue split. Let's just own the whole thing. And they can actually do that. There was a law that changed in 2020 where studios didn't used to be able to do that. Now they can technically, as long as it would get past antitrust stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a play down the road where Netflix becomes owner of a chain or starts their own and have, here's our Netflix, certain movies or shows are in theaters, and our Warner Brothers assets as well. But as it stands now, unless there is something majorly different that changes, I think that the movie theater experience will always exist on some level, but it's just a dwindling thing at this point. And 10 years is a long time. Who knows what happens in 10 years? But even 5 years, look, since 2020, unless there's some major change here or Hollywood starts making great movies again, I don't even know if that point was streaming, how much of an impact it would have. It would help the theaters out, but streaming is just this thing that's never existed before when you're talking about Hollywood that it does now that just changes the entire dynamic.
No, well said. And I think it was Jay who mentioned it in our group text where it's like, theatrical will probably always exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
To some degree. But it's like radio or radio exists, right? But is it relevant like it was, 50 years ago? No, right? So it's kind of the same idea. Like theatrical will always kind of be there, but it'll probably be a shrinking market as it goes. But it's wild. It's wild. No,
I agree. Go ahead. I was just going to say, I agree. And I think it's going to be more like a niche than anything. It's more about the experience than just watching a movie. Even now, when I go to movie theaters, I don't go to those simple, just a plain movie theater. I go to the one where I get a VIP, nice, comfy couch. I get a menu at the chair, and they can serve me alcohol, and I can watch a movie. No kids too, and I just relax, and it's like my little mini vacation, and I'm watching a movie, and I'm just having a good time. That's the experience I want to go when I go to a movie theater now, or else it's not even worth it for me. I could just stay home and watch it on streaming.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I do see that becoming the future of theatrical, where movies like Avatar, for example, will do very well in theaters because that's a theatrical experience. You can't duplicate that on your iPad iPad at home or even on your screen at home. That's very much an experience, right? Where a lot of these other movies, like you can get away with like a rom-com. You don't necessarily need to see that on the big screen.
That's the death of the rom-com. It's almost on streaming now. Like all the movies that would have came out in the 90s that did moderately well, they're just streaming stuff now. That's all it really is. I actually think if you look at the music industry, that's probably what you're looking at with movies. And that just happened first. And that there were all like, there's still, people still buy albums on some level, but for the most part, they stream it. Concerts became a bigger thing. Those became expensive. You'll still have your tentpole movies where it's an experience on IMAX, but I think these movie theater chains are going to have to get pretty inventive. You've seen them do the popcorn bucket stuff to try and bump up revenues. Yeah. Doing more of these like Back to the Future type of experience, like Alamo Drafthouse type stuff. They're going to have to get pretty inventive because I just think it's one of these things where it will become more of a niche experience that is more tailored to just, get away for a little bit, enjoy yourself. But it's not as much about, we're going to go to the movies every single weekend. Like people just don't do that anymore.
No, exactly. And it's interesting too how there was some news today that dropped that Disney's going to re-release Endgame, which really weird decision, but that's kind of interesting. And also the original trilogy, I believe, in its original form, not special edition. That's interesting.
Yeah, I saw that. I think they're doing Endgame like that to try and ramp up a little bit of interest in Doomsday because I think Doomsday will do well, but it doesn't have the lead up like Endgame did, where you're like, where is everything? So like give people like, remember Endgame? Okay, here's Doomsday. I think that's partially why they're kind of doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And,
Oh, go ahead, Seymour.
Oh, sorry, because you were talking about niche. I just remembered in China, the movie theaters for Zootopia 2, they let their dogs come into the movie theaters.
I saw that. That's pretty cool.
Terrible time.
Yeah, it's wild out here in California. It's pretty normal. Like we have dogs in strollers, and it's wild. But yeah, I mean, I'm a dog person. I have a soft spot for dogs. Like I can't watch a movie where a dog dies. I can watch human beings in movies die all the time, but a dog in the film dying, I can't. My heart can't do it.
We're actually looking for a puppy right now. So my wife is much more of a dog person than me. I love dogs as well. I don't like cats, but going to a movie with dogs, I'm like, I could do without that. I have children at home. I already have things I have to, tend to when I'm watching movies as it is.
No, I feel you. Now I want to ask you guys, because streaming is a big part of this, right? So Netflix is by far the biggest streamer. But then if this goes through, they're going to also own HBO Max, which is a massive streamer in and of itself, right? And I was watching Dan Murrell, which I will play a little bit of his stuff in a little bit because I think Dan is great. But like he was talking about this, and like if this goes through, Netflix, Warner Brothers will have 30% of the market share in streaming. Yep. What are your thoughts on that, Jared? And I'll go to Mr. Duck.
I mean, that's the single thing if you're talking about regulators. I don't think it's the movie stuff. I think it is HBO Max combining with Netflix and just becoming a monopoly right there. And what's very interesting is apparently Netflix's argument to the regulators is going to be YouTube.
Yes, I saw that.
YouTube is the biggest streamer.
Just about to say that.
Yeah, which therefore, we're not in pit. Which I would say YouTube and Netflix are different, but like that's going to be their arguing point, is that YouTube is there, so therefore we're not. I don't know. I mean, we'll get into it about like the regulation side and how that could play out. Gets very interesting before you even get into Paramount is not going to let this go. But I mean, it would make a massive. I mean, and not even talking about you've got all the stuff that's been on HBO and HBO Max for decades. Now with Netflix, I mean, no one would ever touch Netflix and streaming. I mean, Disney would be playing for scraps of third and fourth place at this point. I mean, they just wouldn't even be in the conversation about even being close to Netflix.
No, 100%. What say you, Mr. Duck?
Yeah, there would be a powerhouse. Yeah, that's one of the things, monopoly, that people are afraid of in the industry. That's why Hollywood is scared, right? That's why a lot of people are scared. There might be some overlap though with HBO, so you might, lose some subscribers if you merge it in. And Netflix did say they might make a separate service. So I don't know what's going to happen with HBO as a premium option to Netflix. I don't know about that. There's a lot of talks. There's a lot of things happening in motion. But yeah, they would be the top dog. But in regards to the regulators, I don't. It's gonna take a while, but I don't think. I think it's gonna go through. I don't think they're gonna have an issue. It might take a while, but I actually think it's gonna go through.
Wow.
We live in a world where the administration let T-Mobile's merge with Sprint. Same one that let Disney merge with Fox, and the same one that let Google. They had a whole antitrust where they were going to split Google up because they said, "Oh, YouTube and ads too big." No, everything's fine. And I can see Netflix using that argument now, saying, "Well, you let Google buy, and they're keeping YouTube. Well, why can't we merge?"
That's a great point, Seymour. What do you think? And let's dive into the politics of this a little bit, right? Where it's like, could we have Trump who came out and said, "Hey, I support the Paramount merger," right? And so he's clearly on the I think he's friends with the Ellisons or whatever, and so he's friends with him. And then Jared, you brought to my attention earlier today, and you're absolutely correct. The Obamas have a connection to Netflix.
Yep.
I would assume that's a problem for Trump, right? That's not going to make him too happy. On top of the fact that he's friends with the Ellisons, it's tough now, right? Because now Trump, the administration, the DOJ, they're going to have this situation now where they have to really look at the Netflix thing and okay, is this right? For monopoly reasons, is this going to be an okay thing? At the same time, they have to thread the needle a little bit, because if they come off too harsh, then it might come off, the optics might be you're just doing your friend, a solid over there at Paramount, right? So it's kind of tough to kind of navigate those waters. What do you think, Jared? What do you think's with the whole political kind of landscape here with this? This is going to be kind of treacherous territory.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Well, it's interesting. You already have the Hollywood Teamsters out against this. You have politicians on both sides of the political aisle that have already stated that they're going to be vehemently against this. Hollywood is going to rally, which is going to be ironic because they're going to rally behind Trump to basically not do this. I think there's a lot of things that point to this. If it does get approved, I could see it being vastly different. I could even see a situation where maybe they force, that Netflix gets the Warner Brothers assets, but they force HBO Max to kind of become its own company or something. And we've seen things like this where things can get, you have to change this stuff up to get it approved. Yeah. I would be actually pretty surprised if they allowed it to go through, as it'll probably just be presented if it does get approved. But I could definitely see, I'm not going to predict it, but I think there will be enough pushback to where actually, even if Trump even came across as being favorable to the Ellisons, that a lot of people would be they would still be I think Hollywood would be fine with it. And I personally think what would be the best case in this situation is, instead of selling Warner Brothers just as a whole, that these pieces of IP are auctioned off individually, where you have each studio able to make a bid on these. So maybe Netflix bids for, DC or whatever it is. And I think that would be a much more non-monopolistic way to go about this, that you could do it that way, potentially. Now, I don't know if that's what they'll do, but I would be rather surprised that probably it's not going to change too much in these final negotiations if that was just approved as is. I think there's going to be some major changes, and the political side of things is going to get very interesting, because I think you're going to have a united front, left and right, that are going to be against this.
Yes, I agree with you. And before I get to you, Mr. Duck, I'm going to play this quick clip from Dan Murrell. I love this guy. He does great content. A lot of nerdy movie stuff. He's awesome. I will link him down below in the description. But let's watch a little bit of him, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Duck.
To government officials, saying in part, quote, "As you are aware, Netflix is already the dominant streaming platform in the United States, and permitting it to absorb a major competitor raises antitrust concerns that could result in a harm to consumers. With more than 300 million global subscribers and a vast content library, Netflix currently wields unequaled market power. Adding both HBO Max's subscribers and Warner Brothers' premier content rights would further enhance this position, reportedly pushing the combined entity above a 30% share of the streaming market, a threshold traditionally viewed as presumptively problematic under antitrust law. A further concern is that this consolidation would also diminish incentives to produce new content and major theatrical releases. evidenced by Netflix's own statements dismissing movie theaters as, quote, outdated, which could undermine opportunities for the full range of industry professionals, both in front of and behind the camera, end quote. While ISA has been an ally to the entertainment industry in the past, I think it is going to be very interesting to see how many politicians who may have openly wished for the destruction of Hollywood in public for the last several years are about to become fierce advocates for the theatrical experience in opposition to Netflix. Also, ISA isn't wrong here in that letter. But if the government is just now getting worried about anti-competitiveness in Hollywood, then I think they're a little bit late to the party. I think this potential deal should be given heavy regulatory oversight because I think that it is legitimately anti-competitive. However, I think it will get scrutinized in order to try to tip the scale towards Paramount, especially if this deal falls through, who would not get the same level of scrutiny. And that isn't right.
Now, okay, so Dan brings up some interesting points. Seymour, what are your thoughts on the antitrust stuff and what Dan was saying?
First of all, it's true. They were late to the game. They should have done something beforehand. This talks about Warner Brothers being sold has been there for many, many, many months, and for some reason they're now talking about stepping in.
Right.
They should have done something to safeguard it. They should have talked to Warner Brothers. They should have talked to the CEO and be like, "Hey, what can we do to fix this?" But now the industry is dying. The movie theater industry is dying. Consolidation needs to happen in the industry or else they won't survive. And now you're like, oh no, it will ruin it. It's kind of a little too late. You should have done something beforehand. Why are we being reactive instead of proactive? I've seen that a lot lately, but yeah.
I would also say it's the government, and the government is never proactive.
Yeah, true.
I mean, governments are that's just how they are. I agree with what you're saying, but like governments are just almost solely reactive, like months or years too late.
No, well said, well said. And one thing I actually respectfully disagree with Dan on is that he said that, well, they're not going to have the same level of scrutiny for Paramount, but I don't feel like it's apple to apples though, because Paramount doesn't have the streaming service that Netflix has.
Right. They're much smaller. They're actually smaller than Warner Brothers. They just have cats and the Ellisons.
Exactly. So it's like, yeah, they're not going to be scrutinized to that level just because they're not on that level. I mean, to be fair, right? Go ahead, Seymour.
But there is a point where they just merged with Skydance, and now they're merging again with Warner Brothers. Like, we're just going to let that slide?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. That's fair.
But I would say, I mean, that's a valid point. But even with that combination, it wouldn't be the impact Netflix getting Warner Brothers would be. So even if you have one entity, it's already combined one, it's not the same impact that this could be. Because Paramount, from the streaming standpoint, is probably down there with Peacock. I mean, both of those are pretty much not. I mean, I would say Paramount's better than Peacock is. But if they got HBO Max, I think it would put them at like number 2 behind Netflix. Which that could be your argument right then and there. Be like, well, if Netflix has it, they're already number 1. They're just going to solidify, go beyond 30%. And then let's say in 5 years, do they end up owning 40%? Like then it's not as much maybe now, but like where is this in 5 to 10 years and how much monopoly do they end up becoming off of this move could also be the argument.
But I do want to state, though, that Netflix, because of how the quality of the company is, and how they're the top streaming service, they could, for regulators, they make those deals. Like I said, they might make deals, with the government, like, hey, we'll make movies, we'll ensure jobs for American people coming from Warner Brothers. Not sure if that's going to happen, but they could make those deals to ease the regulators. And I think Netflix is a great choice for that. I'm thinking like a business cap, because if you're thinking about it, you it's less risky if you're with Netflix. Out of all of them, you have a future. And now if you have the execs coming in, the people coming in, and you promise, oh, we won't lay them off for the next 10 years. Oh, we will keep their jobs. We'll keep it American. We'll keep everything in place. I don't think you're going to get that from Paramount. I think you're going to get a lot of synergy where people are going to get laid off and going to focus on AI. If Netflix, because of the scrutiny and the backlash, they might have to make compromises. With Paramount, I don't think you're going to get those compromises because it's so favorable with Donald Trump.
Interesting. I want to actually ask you guys too in regard to how, because there is a Disney equation here, just because Disney is a big player in the whole thing, right? Obviously, I mean, they're not bidding on Warner Brothers, but you know, it's Disney. They're part of this whole Hollywood thing. Jared, I'll start with you. This is crazy right now. Like what's going on here with streaming and AI and all this stuff, right? This is kind of what like the case I've been making for a real long time. Like this is kind of why I'm nervous about like Josh D'Amaro kind of like taking over Disney, because this is the kind of stuff that like we're presented with on the studio side. I'm not sure like D'Amaro can handle this. Like he's sort of like this is not his, he's a park guy, you know? Like, does it make you nervous? Like, we're entering in this landscape, like, it's super complicated. Like, there's political stuff going on. There's AI, there's streaming. And you have this guy coming in from, like, experiences. Like, you know, it's like, is he equipped for this? Like, this is what he's walking into, essentially.
Yeah, you know, the thing I will say, you never know. There have been guys that have no experience in one area that they end up being very well in something. So you never know. But what we know of Josh, it's a valid concern.
Yeah.
I would also point to, I don't think much of these studios are well run as it is. I mean, again, Warner Brothers wouldn't be for sale if they were running a good studio. Disney has been more successful. They've had some good ones and they've had some bad ones even recently. I think this is all such a new landscape for all these places where I agree with Seymour, by the way. Netflix is the more safe choice because Paramount is an unknown quantity. You don't really know yet. They've said a lot of stuff. They have a lot of money, but nothing's proven. Netflix has shown that they're an analytical tech company that makes entertainment. I think D'Amaro, it's like trying to judge like you have a car and you're gonna change it over to an off-roading vehicle. I'm not saying it can't work. I'm just saying there are question marks there. I get the feeling though Josh could navigate it because I think there will be other, like they even said too, like whoever they're gonna, you know, become CEO, they're promoting others. So like more than likely, if it is Josh, Dana Walden's going to be around, probably in a more prominent role. He could lean on her, Alan Bergman, these people. So I feel like he's surrounded by people that could help him where he doesn't know as much. Because I would also argue Bob Iger doesn't know movies either.
Sure.
I mean, I would just so I don't think anybody, you know, Eisner maybe didn't even either. So I don't really know of any Disney CEO other than Walt Disney that really understood the movie side very well. So I think it would just come down to who's around him. And when you're talking about Disney, it's like, okay, well, there's that situation. Dana Walden doesn't know anything about parks, and that makes the most money for Disney. So what's the bigger risk? And I think given movies shrinking, entertainment changing, there's really nobody that is set up for this, kind of like the way Netflix is. Like they understand this world because they kind of created it. And I wouldn't say created it. They tapped into that market with their product that has transformed entertainment. And I think they're the most set up to know like what's going to be coming and really having the, I guess you would just say the balls to do stuff that other studios wouldn't do at this point. Yeah. But all that said, I think Josh could. But again, who knows? He could also crash and burn. Who knows?
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. Perfectly said. And you're right. Netflix is this is the thing, right? We talked about this where it's like on theme parking the other day, where like John Lasseter hasn't moved the needle culturally with animation. Like his last two movies as Skydance have not really moved the needle. But Netflix ain't that. And Netflix, they are 100% tapped into culture. I mean, they move the culture 100%, right? Yep. I mean, we're largely in this right now with the whole streaming thing because of Netflix, you know? So it's like, they're powerful. I mean, K-pop Demon Hunters is the biggest freaking thing in the longest time. I mean, I don't think we've seen an animated film with this kind of fervor probably over a decade. I mean, Frozen was probably the last thing, you know? I mean, so
Frozen, yeah, probably Frozen was the thing that was closest to just even like my daughter and her friends, like they're not as much into it, but the K-pop Demon Hunters is still something they love, which that's been, when did that come out? Like in the summer, right?
Yeah.
So it's stuck around. I mean, it's had pretty good lasting power. I mean, it's just, it's so interesting because I think Netflix, they're so quick to cut stuff. And that makes you worried that, let's say they relaunch DC and it just doesn't do that well. Do they just be like, okay, we're done. No more DC, no more Batman, like whatever it is. Like that makes you worry about like, are they going to give instead of looking at, that's why I was talking about if you piecemeal these things out, if a studio bought DC, they'd be like, this is our baby. We paid all this money for this. We're going to treat this with like the utmost care. Versus you just buy the whole thing. They're just like, oh, what toys can we play with today? And they just pull it out, see what, and they may not value it as much. Now, who knows? They could, but that's just sort of, I think, the worry when it comes to Netflix.
No, 100%. Mr. Duck, what are your thoughts on this? Like, the Josh Giamaro element and all that good stuff.
I agree with Jared. We won't know until we see him in action because, unfortunately, he's getting pushed back, and Bob Iger is getting a lot of the the views on what they do instead of so we don't know what's happening, what's going to happen in the future. Nobody really knows. Well, all we can do is put like our blind trust and hope for the best. If he is CEO, I don't know. Maybe they do pick a third party. I highly doubt it, but yeah, we just have to put our blind trust. Plus, I see him with the photos on Instagram and on social media. He's with a deep connection with his fan base, and just now with a little bit of Hollywood. He's not a bad guy. I can see him, but again, we don't see much of him outside of the park. So we have to put our blind. We have to give faith to the board. We have to give them trust that they're going to do the right decision. But again, we don't know until it happens, right?
No, you're right.
I didn't know about Bob Chapek, and then when I saw him at D23 and everyone was booing him, I'm like, "Oh, this is the disaster."
What I was going to say, nothing could be as bad as Bob Chapek, though. So I mean, if that's your bar, I'd be like, "Well, I'm doing a better job than Bob Chapek." Like, well, that's fair.
No, 100%.
Yeah, with Josh, the fans, I think they love him, right? You see him, they're gonna shake his hands, they're gonna clap for him. I don't think they're gonna boo him at D23.
No, they won't. They won't. And Josh is a very savvy executive. He really is. I mean, I got to give the guy credit, man. I mean, I've been really critical of Josh, but he has navigated these waters. Dana Walden was the darling going into this. Bob Iger, if it was up to Bob completely, Dana would be the CEO. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, I think so too. I've always thought that. Yeah, I agree.
Right. But Josh has come in there and really worked his way through it and really kind of like lapped her in a lot of ways.
Yep.
Like she's kind of almost become like Bergman, right?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. I mean, that's to Josh's credit.
If you look at that, I don't even know what chance. I would be curious if there's, I bet there is, like betting odds on Kashi or whatever about who the Disney CEO is going to be. I don't even know if I'd put Dana Walden at 10%. Like, I think she's in there as just we have to have somebody else that's seemingly in the running for this. But I put her and Patario and Bergman all in the same category. I'm just like, it's either Josh or a third party that's a very, very small chance that take place. That's kind of where I'm currently at with it.
No, I agree with you 100%. I've been hearing more about Josh or the guy from EA than I have about Dana lately. It's kind of crazy, right?
Yep.
Let's dip into. Oh, go ahead,
sorry,
Seymour.
I just want to state that the one thing I do like about Josh that I wanted a little bit from Chapek was that he's expanding experiences more and more with IPs from TV shows and movies. And I'm liking it. And not just in parks, but also in the digital form. And he talks about that a lot. He talks about the gamification of everything. And he talks about the Epic Games collaboration in Fortnite. And I see that as the future where, when we compare it to Netflix, I know we're talking about Netflix, but when you compare it to Netflix doesn't have that yet. Where Disney could go into another area, 10 steps ahead of Netflix in another area where they're not, or the other industries, right? The other companies where they're not in. And I think they could do a great job if Josh, it's forward thinking into that area.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. And I do feel like Josh, I will say this, I do feel Josh has vision. I will say that. Whether people agree or disagree with that vision, I do feel Josh is a guy who has a vision and a roadmap for what he wants to do with Disney. And I respect that. The gaming stuff, very, very interesting. And you're right, Seymour. I mean, they would have a leg up on Netflix with that, Now I want to ask you, I'll start with you, Jared, the theme park side of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've been, I know our friend Jay Shearer, he teases us because we really wanted Comcast to get the Warner, to get Warner Brothers. Because I, as a theme park person, I really want to see what Universal can do with a lot of this stuff, right? Yes. But here's the thing. I mean, we're hearing rumors that they're working, that Comcast is working with Warner Brothers to get the DC rights, like the exclusive theme park rights for DC. Now, if that's true and that happens, that's wild.
Yeah, that whole thing's interesting. By the way, I would also say I agree about Josh's vision, and he has great hair, so I think that goes a long ways with the CEO. No, you're right.
100%.
So there was a story that came out of Bloomberg yesterday before all this broke. I think it would have got more headlines if it wasn't for all this breaking right after this. But it said Warner Brothers exploring licensing DC rides to Universal parks. And so the whole thing is talking about how I'm not sure about how the current contracts are set up, but they're exploring the possibility of partnering with additional operators in talking about basically maybe that would mean that these theme park rights would be separate from this sale with Netflix, which if you look at that, and we've talked about numerous times how Zaslav and Brian Roberts were meeting together, it seemed like they were kind of mirroring each other. But if all that Comcast wanted out of this was the securing of, say, the Harry Potter rights and maybe even the DC rights, if that's all Comcast really wanted out of this and they were able to make a side deal for this, I think Comcast is happy walking away with that. I think the theme park people would be pretty happy walking away with that. And I don't know how realistic their actual bid was. I don't know. We don't know. I haven't heard what Comcast's final bid was for it, but that would be very interesting. And if that were to happen, I mean, that would make for quite an interesting scenario if Universal ended with DC rights, and then what do they do with it? Does Marvel Superhero Island stay? Like, there's a lot of possibilities off of that, but that was a little interesting tidbit that I haven't heard talked about a lot, but could have some pretty big implications on the theme park side.
No, 100%. I mean, we you can have a fully realized Gotham City, which would be amazing. I would love that. Our good friend Theme Park Wizard, he talked about maybe an Arkham Asylum for HHN. There's a lot Universal could do with that property, you know. Also, it would be smart on the political end for Netflix, because if you can sweeten the deal, like, okay, Comcast, you know, yeah, you're not gonna acquire the whole studio, but we're gonna give you this, that, and the other. You at least get a major player in Hollywood that's now like, okay, you know, Netflix ain't so bad. You know, we can do business with them, right? It kind of gets at least one major studio on your side, which is smart.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I agree. Well, and like, if it could be a regulatory thing as well, they could look at that and because you have to wonder if part of this was Brian Roberts and they see the Netflix houses and they see Netflix. I've said for a while, I'm not going to be surprised in 10 years if there's another theme park player that steps up, given how many of these companies just have so much cash. You look at the money that Universal and Disney are making in theme parks, somebody else is going to want in on that. And so if this deal was made on the offshoot of it, to basically ensure that to also get past regulators is interesting. If they already were, if Warner Brothers is already thinking about Netflix and basically being like, okay, this may not get approved, but if we pull these out, put these over here, they might have to do more of this to get it approved. But that could be part of it as well, of just thinking about regulators and just too much being with one company on multiple fronts potentially.
100%. What are your thoughts, Mr. Seymour Duck?
So yeah, I agree. I think in the short term, Netflix might make these deals to appease the regulators, saying, "Oh yeah, we can make deals with the Comcast for the parks, and make deals with other studios." But the thing is, though, I think in the long term, Netflix will develop their own parks. I think eventually, in the end, they will evolve from the Netflix houses and evolve into something like a theme park. It's ironic. I was listening to their earnings call at Netflix last time, and it feels like the success of the K-pop Demon Hunters has changed the whole company's views, because now they're licensing everything that's K-pop Demon Hunters, and that source of revenue coming in for Netflix is brand new. And you know, when you get a little slice of that pie, they want more. And I think eventually they want to grow and grow, because I've stated before, one of the biggest issues with Netflix is that eventually they will stop growing in their streaming service and they need to expand. Where can you expand? More licensing deals, you know, with toys and whatnot, and theme parks, and they could get to the point where they could do that, or they could just license it to Comcast. But they would want to generate more revenue.
I mean, licensing money is easy money too.
Yes.
I mean, it's super. I will also say, but I only know this because my daughter went as a K-pop Demon Hunter for Halloween. they were selling K-pop Demon Hunter Halloween costumes directly from Netflix,
Wow.
like in the app. So that's another way that like they're probably exploring of, if you like Stranger Things, here's a Stranger Things t-shirt you could buy. Like they could do stuff like that. They could also end up, instead of going these third-party routes or selling it, and they'll still do it probably, but you can buy it directly from Netflix if you're really wanting to get merchandise and things.
But
No, well said.
the one thing I want to say though is that in the short term they might make all these deals, but like 10 years from now, the reason why they want to buy Warner Brothers is to do everything in-house. They want to have their IP in-house. They want to have those movie studios in-house. Eventually, they want to, license, those IPs, in-house and make their own parks. Eventually, I could see that grow those Netflix houses to something more.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean,
plus, I think it's really good because if it's only Disney and Universal as the top dogs, the innovation, if you have a third party coming in and pushing it, they will have to innovate as well, and that's great for competition.
100%.
that's true. That's true. Actually, you know what? Warner Brothers is a great IP. I used to love as a kid, and Jared, you could vouch. You and I are about the same age. The Warner Brothers studio stores were amazing. I loved the Warner Brothers studio stores.
Yeah, those were cool. I remember those.
Really, really cool. And I'm as a Disney fan, I remember going into those going, these are cooler than like the Disney stores. Like they had like more of like a little bit of like a actual studio feel to it with like the
Yeah.
hardwood floor and the track lighting. It was pretty dope. But like I want to see Warner Brothers kind of get back into that kind of stuff where they're like really, because here's the thing too, Netflix, one of the problems that Warner Brothers has right now is they don't really move the needle in terms of culture, but Netflix does not have that problem. And
You're not wrong. When stuff pops on Netflix, it pops culturally. I mean, look at Stranger Things, K-pop Demon Hunters. Yeah, when stuff really goes, it goes on Netflix.
Right, exactly. And Warner Brothers really hasn't had that, like not like
No,
Netflix
I
has.
think the closest they got was maybe during Snyder. Well, I would say probably back in Nolan's trilogy, back in those days, early 2000s. But
Maybe Barbie.
Oh, that's true.
That's true. Barbie. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
I think Barbie was the biggest box office they ever did for Warner
Yeah.
Brothers.
I forgot about Barbie. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it says here, and courtesy of Jared, thank you for sharing this. Jared, it says here, Warner Brothers is in talks with theme park operators to license its DC comic book heroes for new rides. The company currently licenses its DC properties to Six Flags, but it's exploring the possibility of partnering with additional operators. Adding DC's IP would be a major win for any hospitality company, including Universal's park business, which already licenses Harry Potter and characters from WB. Yeah, I mean, and look, Six Flags right now, they are looking for any way to make money. They are struggling, right? And you mentioned this, Jared, you mentioned this a lot on your channel and stuff, right? I mean, they are looking for ways to scrape any kind of buck they can get.
I mean, they're shutting parks down. They're not doing well. And I'm sure if you're talking about if Universal were to acquire this, they would also pay a little bit of a money extra to Six Flags to change over these things from DC to something else. But I think where Six Flags is at and what Universal probably wants out of this. Now, if all of this comes away from this and Universal ends up with DC rights and they end up replacing Marvel Superhero Island and then even taking it out to the West Coast, then that also changes the whole landscape of the theme park side of things.
Yes. 100%. It
Disney
does.
would get back if they got rid of Marvel Superhero Island, or if they keep it and they have all the superheroes, but let's say they replace Superhero Island, then Disney gets Marvel rights. So those will be coming to the Disney World parks. So all this changes along with Netflix and Warner Brothers. So you could see just multiple industries having sort of a fallout from this.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting too, where I think maybe 5 years ago, Universal's like, no, I'm not letting go of the Marvel theme park rights. I feel like Marvel as a brand has taken a hit.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
yeah.
And it's not as attractive maybe for Universal to hang on to it. Like if they can get the DC stuff, I can definitely see them like, you know what? It's cool. We'll put Batman in there. You know what I'm saying?
Well, if you think about if he's got a relationship with Zaslav, and who knows, maybe they've also talked to Netflix, and Netflix is like, hey, we don't want to encroach on this. They get an idea what they're doing, and I think superhero movies are on their tail end in terms of culturally, but let's say that the DC stuff kind of really starts at least doing decently well. It doesn't, that would help it, but I still think the DC main characters, Batman, Superman, all these characters are kind of timeless. So even if these movie side isn't doing crazy, it's still going to be a draw if you've got a Gotham City or Arkham Asylum and a HHN, like all these things you could do with it. I think would be massive draws, even if there wasn't a very successful movie franchise alongside it.
I 100% agree with you. I do think that that Zazie and Netflix are going to make that move to kind of woo Comcast. I just think that, right? And they're gonna use that theme park stuff as like a way to bring them on board, because if you can get Universal on board, that at least you have one ally on your side to sort of like, you know, fight this machine, because Hollywood's gonna come for this. They're gonna come for it big.
Well, that's a good point you make, because like that may be the only ally they have in this. It's like you have Warner Brothers, Comcast, and Netflix are like, hey, this is fine. And then you have the other one, which then you would have Paramount and Disney probably being against it. But I don't know how much Disney would pipe up about this, because they did buy 20th Century Fox. So if they kind of said anything, people would be like, hey, didn't you just buy? I'm like, oh, that's true. So Disney may not say much. That part will be interesting if they have any sort of opinion on this as it goes along.
Yeah. And real quick, before we get out of here, I want to ask you both this question, because I think this is kind of interesting. Disney has been kind of the bad guy for a while now, you know, because especially since the Fox stuff, right? Is Disney sort of low key like, yes, because this sort of puts the focus on WB Netflix as the next boogeyman, so to speak, right? Is that how you're kind of feeling too, Jared? Where it's like Disney now is like, okay, I'm cool. I'm gonna be over here, and you can go worry about them now. You know,
it's a good point, and it's weird to say, but Disney could come across as just sort of like not the small player, but they could just be like, oh shucks, we don't know. Like, you know, I agree. Like they have been looked at as the boogeyman, buying up all the things they bought up, and maybe under a new CEO, they kind of take more. And I think really with D'Amaro, and I've said before, I think another thing that makes D'Amaro a CEO that could really be good for Disney is like, we have no clue where he stands politically. So if Disney's looking for a reset, you get D'Amaro in there. He just, you know, has this vision. They just do their own thing. They might no longer be the boogeyman, because you got this major thing going on with Netflix and Warner Brothers, and all of Hollywood's going to be against it, and probably a lot of people culturally. And so Disney could just sit there and be like, yeah, hey, we don't know. Like, just, you know, we're just a small player over here, just, you know, humble movie and theme park merchants just trying to make our way in the world, like sort of thing like that.
No, 100%. What say you, Mr. Duck? I know you follow culturally, like the conversations around these companies. Like, do you think this can change like how like fans kind of see these companies, and maybe WB Netflix is like the big baddie now?
It's very weird, because I remember that the narrative was that Disney was the villain and Netflix was the hero, right? And then politically, people will be like, "Oh, Disney is woke. Disney is trash," and now it's pivoting to like Disney is now fixing itself, becoming a better company, and Netflix is now the villain. And it's very odd, because it's like, well, didn't you just say Netflix was the hero? But now, because they're buying Warner Brothers, they're now the villain. And now they're getting I see it on X, they're getting very political about it on both sides, antitrust and everything, or even, whatnot with that. And it's very ironic, because they were the ones who were praising it. They were the ones who were praising that Netflix was great. Now it's not. And the tone has shifted.
It has.
And I do notice that a lot of them actually don't want Paramount to merge. They actually think that's the worst result out of the big three of getting merged.
Yeah, I'm still,
because they don't actually like the Ellison family and being all rich and whatnot. And yeah, they think that Netflix is like the second choice. Comcast would have been the best choice. That's what I'm seeing when I'm reading on X and seeing a lot of people talk about. But I noticed for Disney, though, that the narrative has shifted a bit, where they're the good guys now. They're like, oh, they're not doing too much political stuff. They're not woke as much. They're fixing all their issues. Netflix is now. But it's like, Netflix has always been that diverse company all along. You're just noticing now. And now they're using that as an excuse, as like, don't buy Warner Brothers, it's going to ruin them.
Well, it's interesting, Mr. Duck. You're right, because the narratives can shift really quick. There was a time when Disney was like untouchable. Like in the lead up to the pandemic, Disney was like untouchable. Every movie they were dropping was like hitting $1 billion bucks. Hitting $1 billion. And Iger was a hero, and it was like, and nobody really complained about Disney. And then like pretty quick, it switched up on them, right? And now we're starting to see it switch up again, where it's like, okay, Disney's sort of taking less heat, and now it's going to be Netflix and WB. So it's fascinating. It's fair, but this is far from over. This whole battle, this whole thing with all the political stuff and the regulatory stuff and the Hollywood stuff, we're buckle up, boys. We are in for a ride.
Oh, and Ellison said they're directly going to appeal to the WB shareholders because they actually offered $30 per share, and I think it was all cash. And so they were saying that Zaslav took this deal because he's going to make more money. And so they're going to try and go directly to the shareholders. Now, if that worked, I don't even know where all this stands. So I agree. Not only regulator, because I do think both sides are going to be against this politically, but then Paramount's not going away. Like, they're really going to continue to push this. So this is, I do not think this is over.
No. I mean, it's fascinating. We'll see how it all shakes out. But before we get out of here, I want to share a little something. This is courtesy of our good friend Jared, who's with us today. This is CTMAPPARELco.com, where you can get all your nerdy t-shirt, whether it be Universal, Disney, Nintendo. Check it out. I'll be linking it in the description down below. Now, Jared, you have a special holiday deal though, right?
Yeah, so there's 25% off through the end of December if you use the promo code Black Friday. So you can get in it. It ships out. It'll be there before Christmas. So you can save 25% through the end of the year on every shirt in the shop. And there's like 5 new ones. There's 2 Christmas ones and a couple of ride shirts. And then we're also going to have some Disneyland shirts. I'm working with OG on some ideas there for the West Coasters out there. Maybe a Westcott shirt is on its way. Maybe potentially.
Yes, absolutely. Make sure I will be linking this down below. Make sure you go ahead and check it out. And use that promo code. I also want to share the lovely Miss Mimi Fan. She's a friend of the channel. If you're looking for anything food-wise outside of, the theme parks out here in California, you can, Mimi's your girl. Anywhere in LA, OC, she can get you hooked up on all the great spots. So make sure you check her out on Instagram and on YouTube. Links down below. This spot in particular is actually right down the street. It says here only 10 minutes from Disneyland. So this is really, really close. And it's a lot better food than anything you'd find at Disneyland. Yeah, it looks really, really good.
I'm a little hungry right now. It looks pretty good.
It looks great. But Jared, it's always an honor and a pleasure having you on the show. Where can everybody find you on social media, sir?
Well, likewise. I always enjoy being here. Enjoy discussing these things with you guys. And I agree. We're going to end up doing more videos on this because this is not going to be the last time this comes up for sure. But you can find me at Cap the Magic here on YouTube. And actually all the socials is at Cap the Magic. And if you want Disney World or Universal Studios Orlando theme park content, at CTM Podcast on YouTube as well. My wife and I have a podcast that's been going for like 9 years now, where we talk about that stuff. So you can find me. And I always enjoy being here. Thank you for having me. And it's always, I like hearing from Seymour. I feel like you said you put your business hat on. I think you need to put your business pond. You go into a business pond. There's like stack machines. Yeah, I think that would work for you.
I think so, Seymour. Next time you should make like a little business pond, you can have like, little, like you said, like little fax machines, little cubicle floating out there in the duck pond. It'd be cool. It'd be very cool. But Mr. Duck, one thing I noticed, Seymour, is I love the detail on your chair. Like the leather.
Oh, thank you.
I love the detail. Mr. Duck, yep, absolutely. Where can everybody find you, sir?
I did want to mention one thing that we did leave out on Netflix. If the deal doesn't go through, Netflix does have to pay a $5.8 billion breakup fee.
Yeah, that's true.
True.
And then part of that deal is also that Warner Brothers can't actually shop around a Paramount offer, and they would have to pay Netflix $2 billion if that happens as well. So there's a lot of like positive that Warner Brothers and Netflix thinks that they can push this through, because the $5.8 billion is a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Yeah, I mean that's almost as much as it. Yeah, I mean that's almost as much as they paid for Pixar, Disney. I mean, I think would they pay like 7 billion, Jared, for Pixar or something
I
like
think
that?
so. They paid 8 for Star Wars and 8 for Marvel, I think. So that's the most buying of an IP of that level.
Oh, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. But Mr. Duck, where can everybody find you on
You-
social media?
Sorry about that. Yeah, you can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck, and also here on Orange Grove 55 at the Duck Pond.
There it is. Everybody, thank you so much for watching this episode. Make sure you follow and subscribe to Jared. Make sure you follow Mr. Seymour Duck. Comment down below with all your thoughts on everything we talked about. It's a big story. A lot more videos on both my channel and Jared's channel on this. A lot of coverage. And until next time, see you.
Thank you so much for watching OG55. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and become a member today.